You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth. Joining us now, Congressman, 7th District, Virginia, Republican Dave Brat. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Hey, morning, John. Great to be on.
Boy, a lot to talk about today. I don't know where to start. Let's start at the beginning, though. Let's start with the Paris Accords. You were one of those in favor of getting out of the agreement. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, it just fails on the thesis statement, which is that it's good for the environment. I mean, we'd already been reducing our emissions by 20%, et cetera, prior to the Paris Accord. It lets China and India out of it until like 2030. And then you just look at the policies. We have 2 Saudi Arabias of natural gas underneath our soil here in the United States. That's clean in comparison to coal and oil, et cetera, according to President Obama, et cetera. And President Obama would not allow us to export clean fuel. And so you just look at the thesis statement, and you just see there's way too much politics going on. And it has to do with this global thing. And then you got John Kerry and all these leaders saying, you know, this is going to bring an end to U.S. leadership in the global economy. And that just says it all. I mean, that sentence is such nonsense. Europe isn't growing, right? You can't name a country that's got optimal growth in Europe at all,
right?
Much less the rest where they're following this climate agenda. We all want to have a clean climate, and the U.S. has got a cleaner climate than most of the world by far. And so we'll keep doing the right thing by innovating, by using the private sector. That's where all the gains have come from. All the emissions, all the new clean energies have come from the private sector. And those innovations, and so we just keep doing what we've always done, and we always outperform the world.
Okay, look, everybody keeps asking the wrong question. They keep saying, well, does President Trump believe in climate change or not? I believe in climate change. Dave, you and I have talked about this. You also believe in it to a certain extent. But whether we believe in it or not, and just having a stupid deal where other countries aren't complying until 2030, and where whatever we do is being negated in 2 weeks by China, which is putting up a coal plant a month, and India, which is putting up a coal plant every 3 weeks. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
No, I heard Al Gore yesterday on the TV. I mean, at first we had global cooling 30 years ago, and then all the Harvard experts 30, 40 years ago said we're going to run out of all fuel altogether in 30 years. And then Gore 11 years ago made the statement that if we didn't solve this global warming in 10 years, it would be too late and we'd be all annihilated. For real. Right? Well, it's 10 years later, so the guy fact-checked them, and Gore had some clever statement. It's just way too much politics. And I don't kind of believe in climate change. I'm a PhD in economics. You show me the data. Right? Whatever the data say, that's the reality. And there's no issue with that, but the hyperventilating from Al Gore and some of those on the extreme environmental side, they're not following the facts. They're making these dramatic statements to get to cheerlead for their team and for their side. And if you want to know the real truth, go look at Al Gore's house, right? A lot of these new innovative technology people, what they're really after is government subsidies for green energy. And just follow the billions and billions of dollars, right? If they're so good, if they do have the innovations, they can survive the free market very easily. And if they can't survive the pressure of the free market, they're nowhere in the ballpark.
Exactly. I would love to see a debate on this climate change between scientists and not politicians. Because the way I looked at this, the money that we had to pay into this thing, into the Global Green Fund, $1 billion or something annually. Nobody else was paying a dime in it. It felt to me like reparations. Like we're just paying into it.
I mean, it's just like NATO, right? Our defense budget, which is bigger than the next 10 countries combined, and we can't get the other countries to even chip in 2% of their economies to help support the cause, right? So they have the shield of the United States of America on that. And then on environment, it's just non-ending, right? It's just the U.S. is being used as a piggy bank instead of staying true to what we've always done, which is lead the world by showing them how free markets work. And then they can copy that, right? China and India have copied our free markets in the last 20 years, and now they're feeding 2.5 billion people for the first time in world history. And that's the fact. And so we should be a light in that way, showing folks, hey, here's the rule of law. Here's the free market system. It works. And we're even fading away from our own principles.
Well, instead, all they want really is our money in order to, and in their words, level the playing field, so to speak, hurt us economically, and it made no sense. We're always footing the bill for all this stuff, and I really commend the president for getting out of it and not even mincing words. Just say, look, it's a bad deal. We're out. That's it. And, we'll have 2 or 3 weeks of people running around with their hair on fire as if the earth's coming to an end. But you nailed it, Congressman, because Al Gore, we saw him on TV. I saw him on I think it was on Fox News Sunday, right?
Yep.
And Chris Wallace said to him, here's a statement you made a decade ago, and you said that 10 years from today, the earth is going to not be what we know it is, and nothing has changed. Right. And so how do you reconcile that? And he didn't really have an answer because there is no answer other than he was wrong.
No. Well, right. And so that they're morphing. They say there's a scientific consensus, which there may be on a lot of these issues, and that's fine. But the statements out of the politicians' mouth are not part of that scientific consensus. Then they just go on and promote drama that you can't believe.
Unbelievable. All right, let's get to the attack in London, Congressman Dave Brat, over the weekend on Saturday night. 8 people now dead, 47 wounded, many in critical condition. Now we've got ISIS. Basically, they got 3 kitchen knives out of a store and rented a van. I mean, now there's no more guns, there's no more bombs. It's just, and then you've got the mayor of London saying there's nothing to be alarmed about. As you know, the president tweeted out yesterday, it's time for my travel ban. We know these people are in the United States, right? We know that.
Yeah.
What is the realistic approach to stop this from spreading in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, I mean, even Prime Minister May came out and said it, right? There's a time to end this political correctness and this tolerance of what is indefensible. And I think we learned a lesson, and our hearts all go out to Europe, and the Judeo-Christian tradition is still in the background there. They are very generous people, so they want to welcome everybody into their countries and do well. But that you also have to use your brains. And God is also the creator of the human brain. And so when you see that these people were already on the list, and then now you find out that all their families knew about what was going on, likely, that's a fundamental problem. And so that's something you can do. You can stiffen up the penalties that if anybody knows about this kind of thing, like if you know about any other felony and you don't report it, there should be some legal consequences. And so that we just got to get common sense smart. I mean, it's not that hard. When you go after the fact and you find out that people knew about these type of plots and that these folks were up to no good, and you don't report it, and then they go butcher people and run them over with trucks, and then the left, isn't proportionally outraged about these kind of things either. You just watch kind of the leftist channels, and they're just kind of biting their tongue because they know just the common sense position is. And so I think it's fairly straightforward. We got to get tougher quicker, and you got to. Our tradition we're very proud of Madison and Jefferson, their statutes on religious toleration, et cetera. Yeah, that's right. You tolerate the religion, but you don't tolerate behavior like this at all.
Well, what you just said is spot on. And when you look at the London situation, we're now finding out, Congressman, that there were multiple people in their family and their friends that were aware that something was being planned and said nothing.
Right.
And so, they're in areas with a high percentage of Muslims, whether they're Islamists or not, we don't know, but they're not being, the families and other people within their community are not outing those that are planning on cutting people's heads off. And so that's a real problem. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I don't think giving them ice cream is the answer, or candy or something like some of the left has been saying. I mean, one of the statements is, well, if we would just be more inclusive. I don't know in London how much more inclusive you can be. They have a Muslim mayor. I mean, they have 85 separate areas that are governed by Sharia law. I don't know how much more inclusive one can be, right?
Right. No, that's what's going on. We tried it that route, and the left just always tries to guilt you. But the left's performance across the globe is dismal. The left's performance on health care is dismal. The left's performance on economic growth is dismal. The left's performance on having a monopoly on education is dismal. And so it's time for people to wake up and think. No one is thinking. And it's just time for the American people to look at all the evidence across the board and say, who has done this to us? Who has put us in this ditch? And the answer is fairly obvious. It's not free markets. It's not the innovative, creative folks that go to work every day that have put us in the ditch. They're trying to get us out of the ditch. And so it's very simple, and start voting accordingly.
Dave, I want to get to, I had heard about this ad, but I hadn't seen it. I was home sick this weekend, so I got to watch TV out the wazoo. So I have on the local stations, and I just got to get your opinion on this, because I heard about the ad, but then when I saw it 5 times, I couldn't believe it. So Democratic candidate for governor and lieutenant governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, running against Tom Perriello in the June 13th Democratic primary, puts an ad out and talks about being a doctor or whatever. And then at the end of the ad, he calls the president of the free world, our president of the United States, a narcissistic maniac, and says that he's going to stop Trump from bringing his brand of hate to Virginia. Now, I voted for Trump. I was his Virginia state chairman, as you know. There were millions of people in Virginia that voted for Trump. I mean, he got beat by 5% by Hillary, but he did carry, I think, 5 or 6 congressional districts, and he's the president. And what does running for governor on earth have to do with calling the president a narcissistic maniac? And what's he talking about, his brand of hate? I don't hate anybody. What are these people talking about?
No, we're in animal farm territory. I mean, up is down. You got Kathy Griffin, or I can't think of her name, the comedian slaughtering the head of Trump, holding it, like she's going to impale it on a spike with blood all over it, so kids can't see it. And then this hard left, this, by the way, is not the Democrats I go to church with, right? I want to always make that very clear. This is the hard left that's putting this campaign on. And it's all about votes. They have to prove who's the furthest left, who's the most progressive, who most wants to deconstruct the Judeo-Christian tradition, the rule of law, and free markets, right? If you want to deconstruct all that's made America great, then you're on the hard far left. And at Katy Perry, so we have Katy Perry and all these concerts of people telling us about love, while simultaneously they impale the president's head covered with blood. And I don't recall any of my conservatives ever doing anything like that. I mean, I've been around for several years now. I've been around probably 10 years in formal politics. I wouldn't condone any of that from my side at all. And so the American people are catching on. They're seeing all the town halls. They're seeing people swearing at the preacher and booing at the prayer, booing the Pledge of Allegiance at my town halls. And the American people are fed up with it. And so that's why they voted for Trump, right? They're sick of the partisan stuff altogether, this Republican versus Democrat. I try not to get partisan. I always try to put things in matters of ideas, right? It's the Judeo-Christian tradition, the rule of law, and free markets. And whoever's in favor of those things that have made this the greatest nation on earth, those are the ideas I'm for. When JFK gets it right, I'll say it, right? Mm-hmm. If Clinton helps to get balanced budgets with Newt Gingrich, I'll say it. And those are the ideas that we need to get back to.
Well, it's kind of crazy. And I heard about the ad, I saw it on the video on my iPhone or whatever when they sent it to me. But seeing it on TV and seeing it 5 times this weekend was quite shocking to me. I really couldn't believe it. And I don't know about politics. I don't think I could ever get involved in it because I know Dr. Northam well. I've had him on my show 50 times. Yeah. And this is the president of the United States. And if he is elected governor, he's got to work with him. I don't know how you can work with somebody that you call a narcissistic maniac and bring in hate to Virginia. I don't know how that brings anybody together. I was just shocked by it when I saw it. It's one of those things that you just have to see it. and I voted for him in 2013. I'm done. I mean, I'm done with that guy. I'm done. I just have to say that on the air. I'm just done with it. I thought that ad was it was sickening to me. And, go run for governor and tell me what you're going to do as governor. Don't be telling me that my president's a narcissistic maniac and he's going to bring hate to Virginia. I mean, I'm just going to work every day. I just found it to be just unbelievable. Okay, let's get to Trump's plan to move the air traffic control system out of the infrastructure package, make it separate, and in his reauthorizing the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, he wants to take out the air traffic control system and privatize some of that. And he says that's going to have great benefit to the U.S. Is that something you have evaluated?
Yeah, I haven't seen his proposals in detail, but there have been several bills, and it's always a tricky one because I've got a lot of rural areas, and my pilots up in Culpeper, et cetera. Some of the free market stuff sounds good, but it almost wipes out the ability of the smaller pilots to exist at all. And so we've got to keep an eye on how we achieve both of those outcomes, because we all want to keep the major airlines, as many of them in play, and we want to have prices come down on fares, and we want it to be fair. And but at the same time, the small guys, we don't want to wipe them out. When you say free market, it's a huge transition, right, to airports and whatever, and the biggies can survive those transitions and the small guys can't. So we got to just make sure as we transition, we got a pathway so the small guys can make it.
Right. So what you're saying is the smaller municipal airports around the U.S. and in rural areas, their traffic controllers have to be taxpayer subsidized because they can't make any money.
Yeah, and the pilots and the small planes, it's just the fees. A lot of it's the fees that are charged to the smaller planes.
Right.
And so, if you just charge it on a plane on a runway, and you charge the small plane the same free market rate, right? That's what it would be. It'd be the usage per hour or however they.
You wouldn't be able to, yeah.
And you'd put them out of business right there.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to fly. Okay, that
right.
that
so we
that
just got to have something that's proportional that at least lets them stay, in the ballpark. Even if they have to pay a little bit more, I think they're open to that, as long as it's fair.
So part of the president's package, we understand, on infrastructure as a whole, he's going to leverage $200 billion to get $1 trillion worth of overall investment through private sector involvement. Now, doesn't that mean tolls? I mean, that's the only way that the private sector is going to get their money back, isn't it? Yeah,
well, yeah. And then also trying to lure, private sector capital in if you incentivize it a little bit. Like, hey, we'll pay to get this thing started if you guys will come in and finish the job. They're going to try and that'll take care of the low-hanging fruit first, right? The jobs that might have happened anyway, or the ones that are just on the edge, and you want to, tilt it toward, okay, let's get some roads and bridges built, et cetera. And but what I'm most worried about is the politics of this infrastructure piece. The Senate right now, the biggest news that's not being reported, and this is always a shocker to me, right? The Senate, you heard all the attention on us. Right, I had to sort through pre-existing conditions and trying to get the premiums down, how Obamacare is failing, et cetera. And now the Senate has basically announced they're not going to do health care. They don't think they have the votes, and it's just crickets. And why might that be? Because the press wants Obamacare. So if the Senate isn't going to do anything, that's good news to the left. And so they get a free pass, and that should be the biggest news of the day. And it's nowhere to be heard, right? And I want to encourage everybody out there, look up every senator that voted and said, when they were campaigning, I'm going to repeal Obamacare, right? And I'm sure it's all of our Republicans. And now they're saying, whoop, it's voting time. Not sure if I want to do that. And we got to hold the Senate accountable because if you don't do that, then you don't get taxed. And then I don't want that infrastructure sitting on its own, right, as an inducement to get Democrat votes, and that's the only thing we do. So we don't do anything free market, and then we're going to use infrastructure to get Democrats on the vote to do something else, and I have no idea what that is yet. But boy, it's pretty slippery up there in D.C. right now.
I tell you what, you're right. The fact that the U.S. Senate, the Republican-controlled Senate, said they don't have the votes, they're not going to act on it. We still have the 60-vote cloture rule. Maybe they would even have it without that. But just saying we're not even going to debate it. Yet the majority of these people campaign on repealing it and replacing it.
We have 51 votes. And so we have enough Republicans to repeal Obamacare, but they're saying we can't find a bill where we can get 51. After 7 years, they can't come up with a bill, right? They've had a little while to prepare.
And actually, they only need 50 with Mike Pence breaking the tie. And even if you take out the two, you want me to call them more moderate Republicans, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, you take them out, they still have 50, but they aren't even going to debate it.
Right. I mean, as of now, they're saying, well, maybe we'll come out with, bullet points, or I forget what they called them today. But there's new articles coming out this morning, heading back, tomorrow in session. And we're up there 4 weeks in a row, and then August is off, and it shouldn't be off. If they don't have a health care bill, they should be up there until they got a health care bill, because we need that to do taxes. And if we do that, we don't have to worry about anything. Right? If we do health care and taxes and infrastructure and deregulation, the economy is going to take off like crazy, and we're all winners. If we don't do anything, we're going to all be losers.
That's right. I mean, that's why the stakes are so high. We're out of time. I want to thank Congressman Dr. Dave Brat for being with us. Represents the 7th District of Virginia, Republican Dave Brat. More information, go to davebrat.com, davebrat.com.